with little hope.
Hi again. Well, the time has come. Time to kick off our first ever Warrior Talk. Our first speaker is Charlie. No pressure, Charlie. Just kidding. Charlie's an instructional coach at Waukee High School, and he has a message about trust. So, lots of applause, please. This is Charlie.
Thanks for all coming out today. I really appreciate being allowed this space and for you guys all taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. And I really feel honored to be the first ever Warrior Talker. So a little scared as well, but let's go along with it. So trust, what's in it for me? Leading up to today, I would say that I've grown increasingly nervous about talking about this topic. And it mostly has to do with what's been going on in our community and our country. There's been a lot of bad things that have happened recently, and we could point to any news story and understand that bad things happen in our world. And it becomes really difficult to lean on trust. In fact, we basically are expected to lean on fear. But I don't want to live in fear, and I can't live in fear. I need to trust others. And I say this because of what I've seen in my classroom. As a teacher for 7 years, I've seen what trust can do and what kind of people it can build. The students in my classroom that sometimes maybe didn't think much of school or really of themselves grow immensely when there's a trust breakthrough. When they see that someone trusts them and they trust others, we see growth. What I think is important about this also is that I think this can be taught. There are things that we can do to enhance trust in our lives, whether it be with students in our classroom or our loved ones. So why trust? What kind of started me down this path? I read this book this past summer, and it was very exciting for me. I desperately wanted to talk to others about this. Now, if you want to see a concerned look on one of your loved ones' faces, tell them you're really excited about reading a book with that title. I believe my wife said something along the lines of, "Is there something we need to talk about?" There wasn't. Everything was fine. And really for me, everything was great because now I had kind of a tool to talk about something that I knew was very important in my life. And a way to kind of have a research back to trust and the power of trust. And so the best part of this book was that it gave me some answers to how do we determine how we trust others? Can I trust you? This is maybe the most important question that you can ask about other people, but also ask about yourself. What does it take to trust others in you? So in the book, she talks a lot about the trust being, about it being very instinctual at first, and how we talk to one another. Immediately when we meet somebody, we decide you're a friend or you're a foe. You start asking yourselves the question, what do I need from this person? Why are they here? What's in it for me? We project the feeling completely on the other person. We don't really consider our own impact in the area. And so that's kind of a first initial part to trust, but there's a lot more to that. So what is trust? I'd ask you to take a minute for yourself and think of what your definition of trust is. My guess would be that you probably think of a person first. You probably don't think of a definition of what this means. And that's pretty common because when we think about trust, we think about relationships. We don't think about words that support that. And it's tough to define because it's such a combination of feelings. Trust isn't just one thing. If we think about the dictionary definition of trust, it has to do with the belief in the reliability of something. So I could trust the stage. It's not going to fall. I trust it. I'm up here. I could jump around. And that's one kind of trust. That's an easy trust. We believe it's going to do its job. But with people, that's a harder definition to stay with, because every person reacts differently to everything. And so we have to find a way to deal with this complicated issue. So in the book, Halverson talks about trust in two different ways and two things that you need to have to be part of a trusting relationship. One of the things that she discusses is warmth. And her definition of this is how you appear to the other people, as far as, do you have good intentions towards me? The other side of this is the competence, which is probably the more important of the two. This is that you'll act on those good intentions. So when someone meets you, they're sizing you up for these two things. Is this a nice person? Is this a person that I believe has good intentions toward me? And then also, will they act on those good intentions? So what happens when trust isn't there? The short answer would be bad stuff. If we think about the classic trust fall, if there's no trust, you fall. Likely, this person jumping off of this is going to have a concussion, and the friends are no longer such good friends or colleagues. And this begins a very quick downward spiral, because now that person doesn't trust them, which is going to lead to a higher likelihood that he's going to do things that aren't very trustworthy. They'll find that in that person, and they'll continue to get in the cycle of downward bad trust. And this can have a huge impact on us. If you think about when you have to interact with someone regularly that you don't trust, how much you think about that. It really consumes you. That can be tough on you physically and also mentally. Why does this happen? I would say when we have something happen in our life, one of two things is what goes on in our brain. We're either going to reflect on the situation, or we're going to deflect. So reflect would be when you look at a situation, see what the impact that you had on the situation, as well as everyone else. You see that other people impacted it, but you also understand you had some control in the situation. There might have been something that you could have done differently to sway the impact. When you deflect, you do pretty much all of that, with the exception of thinking about yourself. You put it on other people. If they would have done this, if they would have done that. You neglect your own kind of role in that. So if we look at reflection, it kind of supports this positive cycle of behavior. When we reflect on our own actions, typically what comes out of that is we think of how we could improve ourselves. We think of how we could improve our relationships with others. We're more likely to follow through in those things that would improve our relationships. When we do those things, people see that, they're more likely to trust you, which then brings you back to, okay, I really enjoy this trust. I'm going to do some more reflecting. How can I continue to improve this? And we see that constantly bring a positive feeling, but also I think what's more important than just the feeling is the actions that come from those feelings. In the deflection side of things, we kind of create these holding patterns. If we're waiting for someone else to do something, then we just wait. We can't control other people's behavior. If we deflect onto other people, we just wait for that to happen. This might sound in your life like, if my boss would just, if my wife would just, if my kids would just, if my colleagues would just. Whenever you say that in your brain, you're not thinking about what you could do. You're deflecting that onto someone else. You're placing the blame somewhere else. And what we often find with that is we wait. We wait. There are things that we should be doing, we could be doing, that we simply don't do. And when we are waiting, we find that people are expecting something of us, and they begin not to trust us. And that's a hard place to live. Especially if we think about the emotional and psychological toll that can take on you and others. Because everyone's probably had a situation in which they're waiting for someone to do something. You're thinking constantly about their reality. And it's very hard to change your own reality when you're focused on someone else's reality. So what happens when trust is there? Good stuff happens. If we think of the trust fall, this guy or figure is about to be caught. He's not going to have that concussion we talked about earlier. And unintentionally, he's going to get a hug from all of these people, which is just a great feeling, unless you have a small bubble. You might not like that. But for most people, that would feel good, okay? What else? The other thing that's built here is confidence. You can rely on these people can rely on you. And it creates an environment for creativity, which is very important because if I know that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, I'm going to do the same. And I'm going to do that alongside you. I might be more willing to take a risk right next to you. And the possibilities become pretty endless there. If we think about what helps organizations grow, what helps communities grow, it's that area of risk. And if you don't have the trust to take risks, you'll never grow. So if we want to have a productive business, a productive school, a productive community, we need to have that trust there so that we can take those risks. Because in those risks are the breakthroughs that change communities, that change lives. You have to push yourself just a little bit more. And with trust, you can do that. If there's no trust, everyone's just going to wait. If we look at these two cycles, I would say it's pretty evident that we want to be on the yellow side. We want to be in the trust cycle. If you're in a classroom, this trust is paramount to a kid being able to reach their potential. If you're in a business and you are in the distrust cycle and you're wondering why your employees aren't performing at their highest, this probably would be the first place to look. So if we think about the trust versus the distrust, and we know we want to be in the trust cycle, what do we do to get there? I think this is the most important part of this, is I think we all on some level understand that trust helps us more than distrust. But how do we build trust? And how do we focus it mostly on what we can do? If we know that we can't control what others do, how can we focus ourselves to become more trustworthy and then also project that trustworthiness? I'd say the number one thing, and some of you have probably seen this before, would be have conversations and not versations. Now, if you've read the book Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott, this probably looks familiar. In a conversation, just by the word itself, it implies that there are two people talking and listening. And what's key to that is that they're talking and listening with one another. You've probably all been in a conversation that wasn't really a conversation. It was a versation. Your boss tells you what to do, doesn't ask for your input. That's a versation. They're not including you and hearing you out if you have a different idea. And so have those conversations because this implies listening as well, and there is no better feeling than being listened to. And nothing more that creates trust than feeling like you've been listened to. And that would lead kind of into our just be present. So 1 and 2 go together in many ways because if you are texting, working on your computer while you're supposed to be having this conversation, you've really turned it into a versation. The other person's talking, you're not really hearing everything that they're saying, and so you're probably not going to give the most productive input on your end. So be present can look a lot of ways. Good eye contact, an open body posture, just signaling that I'm here with you and there's nothing that is going to come between us for this conversation. Third thing you could do is mind your body. The nonverbals that you send are far more impactful than what you say. If you're kind of closed off, maybe hugging yourself, making yourself small, that gives the other person the impression that you're not really listening, or there's something else on your mind, which when someone perceives that, it's very difficult for them to believe that you're a trustworthy person. So number 4, do what you say you're going to do would get at the competent side of trust. And really it is the competent side of trust. It's how you do trust. If you think about in your life what have been some of the biggest times when you have felt disappointed in another person or in yourself, it probably has to do with this. If you say that you're going to do something and you don't do it, the other person likely is upset in some way, disappointed. But when you know that you didn't follow through on that, you're equally disappointed. It's not a good feeling. And so when you sign up to do something, make sure it's something that you can do. If you can't, honestly, no sometimes creates trust, saying no when you can't do something. And it's important for you to understand what you can do and what you can handle and what you can't handle. Because there's nothing worse than putting too much on your plate and destroying relationships by not following through. Okay. Guy probably looks familiar. So my vision for what this looks like really comes from a personal level. We talked earlier about what our country and community look like right now, and it's pretty hard to say that go out and trust everyone. And I would hope that that's not my entire message today. And it's really more about you and what you can do to be a more trustworthy person. I'm about 4 months away from welcoming my 3rd child into the world, and my vision for her and my other children and the people that I work with is to work on themselves as human beings. Because when we improve ourselves, there's a much higher likelihood that we'll improve the world. I guess in the last portion of this, when you think about what you can do for this to support that vision, would be to look inward. When you have those moments when you say, if my whomever would just, think about the whole situation. They probably have a lot going on. You have a lot going on. How did you get there as a team? How did you get there as a partnership? Because there's a lot more to conflict than just the other person. And so take that moment to look inward. And I trust that you will. Thank you.